Yeah. It's recording. All right. So today, Pathophysiology, Chapter 8. Uh, all right. So we're continuing on the foundational stuff. Now, when we talk about pathophysiology, we're talking about the disease process. And the important thing to remember here is the fact that we have something going on with the body. The body needs to take care of itself. I was talking about this with my night EMT class, and it's thinking about what the body's trying to do. Okay, we're really going to be discussing homeostasis, and what is homeostasis?
It's how you react or your body reacts or adapts with the environment.
Okay, and what does it want to do with the environment?
Adapt to it, protect yourself.
So there's a hurricane coming right now, literally over Port Arthur, Houston, Galveston, that area. Do you think people want to be outside exposed to the elements, or they want to be nice and comfy and safe in their own homes?
In their homes.
In their homes. And so, really, when we think about homeostasis, we got to think about a state of equilibrium, is really the definition, a state of equilibrium. Another way to think about it, like in Happy Gilmore, it's happy place. Go to your happy place, right? That's where we want to be. Or a little bit more imagination. Think about a baby. Where does that baby love being?
In the parents' arms.
More specifically, mom's arms, right?
Yeah.
Because dad is like, excuse me, wants to be in mom's arms. And when somebody comes, a stranger comes, and they, you startle them a little bit. What do? They bury their face in mom's chest, right? Well, isn't that a happy place for them? So imagine being that small. This is why imagination. Imagine being that small in your mom's arms, and you're in there all nice and comfy and safe, right? Well, that's the way to think about homeostasis. Is it's a state of equilibrium, being in its happy place. And don't we always want to go back to our happy place?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. And so that's what the body is doing. When something is affecting that equilibrium, it's going to do what it can to take care of itself and go back to that happy place. So what you're going to see is the body adapting to what's going on to return to that equilibrium. Or again, to return to that happy place. That's what we're going to see. Now, our body is going to go through metabolism, or there's metabolism that needs to occur in order to be able to create energy that is needed in order to perform functions. Right now, although you can't see me, you've been able to see me the last few minutes, you'd see that my hands keep going. Well, my hands keep going round and round and round. I'm just kidding. My hands go round and round, and all that is taking muscular contractions. And so those muscular contractions require energy. Our brain, to really be thinking this much at this hour, needs a lot of energy, right? For some of us, we're like, yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of energy, so we're laying down, relaxing. no energy. But others actually had to get up, right, and sit there, and that required some energy. Well, where does that energy come from? From the stuff that we eat. So, all right. So, EMTs Abby and Brian are on the scene of a 52-year-old man who's complaining of difficulty breathing. The patient is breathing shallowly and rapidly. He gasps, "Need help, can't breathe." So, what purpose does breathing do? What does it serve to do?
Supply your brain with oxygen, blood flow.
Well, remember, it's not blood flow, that's the heart.
Well, oxygen to the blood.
Okay, but where's that going to occur?
Where is that going to occur?
Mm-hmm.
In the lungs and the
Okay,
bronchi, right?
so now, if you think about it, so you went a little bit too far. You're right. Breathing, or the purpose of breathing, is to bring oxygen into the body, into the lungs, to where it's going to be distributed throughout the rest of the body using the circulatory system. But the main purpose of breathing is to bring oxygen into the body. Is that a better answer?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're right. The purpose of it is to deliver oxygen to the brain and to distribute it throughout the body. But that's going to be more the circulatory system more than the respiratory system. So now, in what ways does the problem with breathing affect the body?
Problem with it?
What was that?
If you stop breathing,
Okay, so let's deal with, we call it apnea, which is the absence of breathing,
right?
or respiratory arrest.
Well,
Okay, so what about that?
you shut all the oxygen flow to you.
And
It's shut down.
okay, so now there's no oxygen getting inside the body, but there is more to it than that. What else is not occurring?
Hmm. Well, if you're not breathing, you can't get the carbon dioxide out of your body. If you can't get it out, you're suffocating yourself. But
Correct. That is exactly what I was looking for. Remember, if we're not breathing oxygen in, we're not exhaling or breathing out carbon dioxide.
you're just poisoning your system pretty much.
Not necessarily poisoning. In a way it is, but it's not really. And we're going to talk about that. But we're gonna make the body acidic, or have more acid in it than it cares to have. Now, besides the stopping of oxygen, what else? Or the stopping of breathing, what else?
You can't breathe, you're just pretty much SOL. I mean, your body starts to shut down. I mean, you'll turn blue. There's not your heart rate slows down.
No, it's not.
Pumps
Oh,
faster in a
there you
struggle.
go. But don't think so doomsdayish. Right now, let's say you have asthma and you can't breathe. Now what?
Well, you take an inhaler to open your bronchioles up.
But we're not talking about taking care of it. I'm just saying, how is that going to affect your your body?
Uh, It strains you. I know that.
What do you mean?
Well, you got asthma. You can't breathe as good. You're just gasping. You're struggling to get that air flow.
So you're trying to get air, and what's that going to do?
Mm. Everything's gonna kick into overtime. You wear your own self out.
Okay. As we're going to discuss, whenever you have something that's causing the oxygen not to be delivered to the alveoli, the body's going to start struggling. But as I mentioned earlier, the body's going to do what it can to take care of itself. You're going to see changes to help pick up the slack. Okay, you are going to see changes to see the body pick up the slack. Um, all right. So the body is going to need several things in order for it to function. The first thing is oxygen. Okay. It needs oxygen because that's going to be that's what's needed to help break down sugars. And that's the other thing that we need. Okay. Yeah, we need water, and 70% of us is water. But the two most important things are oxygen and sugar. Think about how cranky you get if you don't have sugar, because your body's needing that sugar to create energy. And it uses the oxygen to help break down that sugar. Okay. Now, whenever there's something that occurs, whether it's a disease or an injury, and it interferes with the body's ability to deliver that oxygen or sugar, or even get rid of anything that's a result of that, the body's going to be like, hey, dude, whoa, 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 what are you doing? And all right, got to get to work. So you're going to see what happens in the body. And that's what pathophysiology is all about. So really what our job is as EMTs, and again, this is foundational stuff, is we need to help reestablish that oxygen or that glucose. If the person's bleeding out, guess what? We need to stop that bleeding. Did I tell you guys already? When you think about oxygen, or I'm sorry, when you think about blood, you have to think about oxygen. Have I told you guys that yet?
I think so.
Okay. Oxygen is transported in the blood, correct?
Yes.
So if we're losing blood, we are losing oxygen. So there's a direct relationship there. Now, if we lose oxygen, do we lose blood? No,
No.
because if we're having, as Brian mentioned earlier, asthma, are we losing blood with asthma?
No.
But are we losing oxygen?
Yes.
Yes.
So as far as if you lose blood, you lose oxygen, that is a direct relationship. But as far as losing oxygen, you're losing blood. No, there isn't. It's a one-way street in that case. Okay. So you have to think about if I'm losing oxygen or if I'm losing blood, I'm losing oxygen. That's how important it is to reestablish that. Now, also, don't you get cranky when you haven't eaten anything in a while? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now, the way we get energy. The way we get energy is by cellular metabolism. With cellular metabolism, the body is breaking down those molecules of glucose and creating energy. Now, at this level, we don't need to understand and know the Krebs cycle, okay? But that is the way that sugar is broken down, and utilizing oxygen and stuff like that. However, do know that there's two types of metabolism. The first type, which I can see Brian doing, is called aerobic metabolism. What to remember is, remember aerobics, the leotards and the, all right, let's dance, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
Jane Austen or something like that. That was the girl's name, lady's name. Okay. So aerobic means using air, using oxygen. So we bring in oxygen, we have the sugar, we break it down, and we create energy. The other type is called anaerobic metabolism. Remember the prefix an, or also a, so it's either a or an, means absent or without. So if aerobic means with oxygen, what's anaerobic? Without oxygen. That's going to be a problem. We're still, don't get me wrong, we're still going to create energy. We're just not going to create enough of it. Okay. We will create energy, just not enough of it. So, which one's better, aerobic or anaerobic?
Okay.
Aerobic, yeah. Aerobic metabolism is better, so let's try to do that whenever possible. Or let's help the patient do that whenever possible. Okay. So. Trying to find.
Yeah, he has electronics.
What was that? Oh.
Oh no.
All right. So regular metabolism really doesn't require any oxygen. So normally we are going to create energy. It's a very small amount, but we're still doing it. That's why with anaerobic metabolism, we're still creating some energy, but not a lot. So we throw the oxygen in there, and we're able to create a lot more energy. Now, forgive the crudeness, but right now, as you're breathing, right? But let's take eating. Let's take the process of eating. Your body is going to break down that food to be able to get energy, right? Now, is there anything left over when you eat? I bet you there is, because 16 hours later, you got to go sit on that porcelain throne and take the kids to the pool, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's waste product. That's a waste product. So, same thing happens with metabolism. As we break down the sugar and the oxygen, or as we break down the sugar using the glucose, we're going to have waste products. What are those waste products? Yeah, so what are those waste products? Should be in your book. All right, so feel your skin right now. How does it feel?
Cold.
You're cold, then there's something wrong with your thyroid. So the first byproduct is heat. So if you think about it, when a person dies, what happens to their body temperature?
Drops.
It drops. Why?
The lack of blood, oxygen.
The lack of metabolism. There's no more blood flow. There's no more glucose circulating through. And so again, the cessation of metabolism, there's no more heat being created. Think about those furnaces, or think about the trains, the steam trains, where you throw wood inside the oven and it creates the steam. It makes it go faster. So kind of the same concept. We eat to get that energy. The more energy we have, the more sugar, right? Just think about Halloween and the day after Halloween.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, people tell me, oh, they've done studies, they've proven that's not true. Well, okay. So why have I had parents tell me, you ain't giving my kids candy no more because they got hyper? See, that's why Uncle Mikey doesn't babysit too often, because I will give them candy at night before I give them back to their parents. And then the parents can't sleep because the kids are all wired. So I've done my own studies. Thank you very much. So anyway, so one of the waste products is heat. Okay. So this is what happens. So in the cell, now the glucose has to go in the cell, and then oxygen's there. And what's that squiggly thing on the right? where that lightning bolt is coming out that says ATP energy. You guys remember that from biology?
Not really.
The mitochondria. It's the mitochondria. So that's where the energy is created. Okay. So glucose comes in, oxygen comes in, it creates ATP, which means adenosine triphosphate. All right. So the process that occurs, or the creating the breaking down of the sugar, is called glycolysis. And so that's what creates a little bit of ATP. And then it goes further into the mitochondria, like I said, where it creates more ATP. So normally we have 36 ATP molecules that come out every time the process occurs. 36 ATPs. Okay. All right. So we talked about the byproducts. I mentioned heat. So what else? How about this? If you guys don't answer, everybody's gonna have to be on camera. Good motivation?
What do you mean? Like, what else happens when?
No, I just want to know. Well, yeah. What else is a byproduct?
Oh,
So when he broke it down, we create heat. Here's another one. It creates water. It was in your reading because I know, because it's in your PowerPoint. And it creates carbon dioxide. So the byproducts is what's left over, just like burning a piece of wood at a campfire, right? You use it all up, you change its form. It's still wood, it's changed form. And so you have that ash as the byproduct. But again, you're getting that radiant heat. Get it? Heat, byproduct of burning wood.
yeah.
Okay, same thing here. You're burning sugar, you're creating heat. But you're also creating carbon dioxide and water. Well, does the body like water?
Yes.
Some of you prefer beer over water, but there's still water in beer, so But I like monsters over water, actually. But carbon dioxide. Does the body like carbon dioxide?
No.
And how do we know? We breathe it out, right? Right? Should have been a question mark. So the body's going to get rid of that carbon dioxide through exhalation. Oh my goodness, the body is doing some stuff and I'm looking at it and oh, awesome, right? No? You guys aren't excited about seeing the connection? We need to create energy. Remember what I said? That energy is used for the body to function. And so as a result of that energy, or breaking down the glucose into energy, we're going to have byproducts. Again, the smokestacks, the exhaust in your car, the heat off of burning a log at a campfire, all that stuff, you have byproducts. Again, having a nice meal and then taking the kids to the pool later on. Those are byproducts. There's byproducts with everything. And we've already talked about how the body exhales carbon dioxide, right? Well, kind of, where did that carbon dioxide come from? So actually, one of you guys asked me, where did that carbon dioxide come from, Lou?
Where does the carbon dioxide come from?
Thank you, Brandon. That carbon dioxide came from the breaking down of glucose in the mitochondria to create energy. And so now that carbon dioxide is getting out of the cell, it's getting to the bloodstream, which is going to take it back to the lungs to go to exhale it, because the body's not going to like that carbon dioxide. Okay? So, good question, Brandon. Thank you for asking. You guys aren't smiling much this morning. Look at the bright side. It's not Monday.
Yeah, almost the halfway through the week.
Yep. But for you guys are already or 50% done with the school week. Unless you have kids and you still got 2 more days.
Yeah.
You guys are like, thanks, Lou, for reminding us. All right. I'm about to show you why that energy is important. And most of the energy is used here. And that's that sodium potassium pump. All right. Without getting too much into the details, you guys are familiar with electrolytes. Okay. You guys familiar with positive, negative electrons, protons, neutrons? Remember all that stuff? Well, the body is electrically charged. We know because the heart generates electricity, and we see that electricity traveling. So does the brain. There is electricity in the brain to cause the signals to move. And so what happens is the body needs to maintain certain electrical charge, certain electrical neutrality. Now, the cells themselves, you have the cell membrane, which is, let me go back over here. So you have the cell membrane, which is the wall, the outer wall. In this case, the wall is used to keep things in. It gives that cell its shape. Now, there's also water within the cell, the cytoplasm. And so water goes in and out. One of those electrolytes is sodium. So if you eat too much salt, what happens to water in your body?
It, like it not like evaporate, but I mean,
No, you retain all that water.
oh yeah, that's
The
why you
more
can load
sodium-
it and all that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so PMS, really, sorry, ladies, I can't help but pick on you. But really, PMS is because they've retained too much fluid and they're really cranky. And some of them also, as they're starting their menstrual cycle, and now, again, I don't mean to pick on you, but do some of you ladies start to get bloated as you begin your menstrual cycle? Yeah, some do. They're like, oh man, I'm about to start. I get all bloated. It's true, ain't it?
Yeah.
So the rule to remember is water follows sodium. If there's too much sodium in the cell, where's that water going to go?
In the burst.
Yeah, it's going to go inside the cell, and there's going to be too much water in the cell, and then it's going to go pop. Okay? It's going to go pop. And then, if there's not enough sodium, where's that water going within the cell? Instead of looking for a sugar daddy, he's looking for a salty daddy. So that water is going to leave the cell. Go find where there's more sodium. Sorry, didn't mean to make it that weird. But it's true. The water, remember, water follows sodium. So the water is going to go out and go where there's more sodium. So what's going to happen in that cell? It's going to collapse. So in order to maintain that equilibrium, remember we talked about equilibrium?
Yeah.
We have what we call the sodium-potassium pump. So what happens, there's a channel. You see the top left picture, and it's also in your book. So there's a channel that's open within the cell. And sodium goes up into that channel, into those receptors, sodium receptors, and it attaches. And then what happens is, as soon as it has its 3 sodium molecules on there, here comes an ATP molecule. And ATP stands for what?
And then
adenosine.
triphosphate.
Adenosine triphosphate. Think of the triphosphate. Means there's 3 phosphate molecules, right? So in order to open up that channel, because right now to the outside world it's closed, so it needs to open. So that ATP molecule comes into a receptor and energizes it and goes, causes it to open. And so out goes the sodium. In the process, one of those ATP molecules gave its life to open up that chamber or that channel. It sacrificed itself. Now, while it's open, here comes some potassium. And potassium gets into that open chamber. And once it fills up, that chamber, without any energy, just boom, closes back up. And that potassium drops into the cell. Now, again, it's open, so there goes more sodium into those sodium receptors. Here comes another ATP molecule, opens it up. Now, what we're left with is what we call adenosine diphosphate. Now it means 2. And so if we know we need ATPs, but we have ADPs, what does the cell need to do? So Carlos, Brandon, and I, we're the ATP molecule. And just because I'm the teacher, I will sacrifice myself. So now Carlos and Brandon are fighting by themselves. So what do they need to do? Hopefully not throw a party because I'm gone. So what do they need to do?
Provide that energy, open that up.
Okay, but can the 2 of you do it by yourselves? And forget that you guys are big, strong guys. Can you do it by yourselves?
No.
No. So what do you need to do?
Multiply.
I need to get somebody to replace me. And remember, what's happening with metabolism?
Getting that energy from the metabolism.
Yeah, creating more ATP. So we need to produce more to replace that weakened molecule. You see the process? Are you guys able to follow along?
Yeah.
As one drops have to pick up another one, have to create more to replace it. So the sodium potassium pump is where sodium and potassium are switching out, because the cell membrane, if you remember back to biology, and you see it in the picture there, it's made of phospholipids that some membranes are semi-permeable. In other words, not just anything can get in there. The chusma stays out. It has to have permission to go through. There are some things that can move freely, which is water is one of them. But there's others like glucose, it can't just go in there. Even though it's needed, it doesn't let glucose just freely go in and out. And so there are chambers, the sodium potassium pump, that allows things in and out. And there's other types of chambers too, but this is a big one because it needs to maintain that polarity, that positive negative charge. Because think about it. So you got Ruben that works out, right? And he's been doing 2-a-days. Let's say he plays football and he's doing 2-a-days. So is he sweating a lot? Okay. Yes, he is. Have you ever, after working hard in the yard or working out, playing games, have you ever found yourself with your shirt once soaked, but once it dries out, you see those white streaks on your shirt? What are those white streaks?
Salt.
What was that?
Salt.
Salt. Salt. And then you notice you cramp up?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what do you drink when you're outside working out?
Water, Gatorade.
Okay, water's good. However, what you're losing when you sweat is electrolytes.
Electrolytes.
And so with those electrolytes, we have problem with muscular contractions. So that's why Gatorade was made, specifically for the humidity down in Florida. That's why it's called Gator, the Florida Gators, the university football team.
Yeah.
So as you guys have seen that commercial. So it helps replenish those electrolytes. The only bad thing about Gatorade, anybody know?
The salt.
No,
Sugar.
the sugars.
Oh,
Sugar gets you up and then brings you down. So with some of those drinks, for every Gatorade bottle, you should be drinking a bottle of water. All right. So the sodium potassium pump, ATP is required to move that channel open and closed. Mostly open. And it closes it on its own. So it pops that off. Okay. Did that make sense?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So have you guys or ladies ever started working out and you're lifting some weights, and in order to push out or push up, you hold your breath,
Yeah.
right? And you do that repeatedly. And then later that day or the next day, you're all sore. You're sore all over the body or wherever you're working out. You ever had that happen to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did that happen?
Buildup of acids.
Which acid?
Amino acids.
No. Amino acids are used to break down stuff. Amino acids are good.
Carrying them what kind of acids there.
You're right, it's acids, but what kind of acid? Lactic acid. Lactic acid. Now, if we're not breathing, are we getting oxygen?
No.
No. All right, good, Abby. So we're not getting oxygen. And so because of that, what kind of metabolism are we going to switch to?
Anaerobic.
Anaerobic.
Anaerobic metabolism. Now, we're still creating energy, but not a lot. Now, normally we produce anyway is pyruvic acid. It's okay. The body breaks it down. It's not a big deal. However, in the anaerobic metabolism, that pyruvic acid creates lactic acid. And the reason it does is because that pyruvic acid becomes fermented, creating the lactic acid. So again, when you're sore, you're working out, right? Right now, my pecs are all sore right now because I was tired last night. You know, doing 350 is really tiring. But because I was tired, I wasn't breathing right. So right now, man, my pecs are sore. You see my nose getting bigger? So anyway, so that lactic acid built up. Well, here's the thing. The body does not like acid. It hates it because when it's in the bloodstream, when it's at the cellular level, it breaks down the cell membrane, the cell wall. So what's going to happen if that cell wall breaks? What's going to happen if that cell wall breaks?
Cell's gonna fall apart.
What was that?
Cell's gonna fall apart.
Yeah, the cell's going to rupture and spill its contents. And then what happens? And then
Lack of oxygen, lack of energy.
well, first off, we're breaking down that cell wall. And so it's going to rupture and spill its contents out to the neighboring areas. And then it's going to leak out, or it's going to break down the cell membrane of the neighboring cells. And those cells are going to rupture, and they're going to affect their neighboring cells. So you see the cascade system that's going on here?
Yes.
Is that really a good thing that we want to maintain? It's kind of like, no, right? Well, guess what else happens? When we die, it's going to start going down into anaerobic metabolism, right? Because there's no oxygen. And it's going to put the body, or it's going to break down the cell membranes because that pyruvic acid is building up. And it's going to eat away at the cell membrane, and then that cell's going to explode and send its lysosomes and contents to the neighboring cells and break down. And then those cells break down, and the next cells break down, and so on and so forth. So what is all that acid doing to the inside of your body?
Basically destroying everything little by little.
Mm-hmm. So you see, regardless whether you're alive or dead, all right. If we don't have the oxygen and we have lactic acid buildup, it's going to destroy the body. Again, alive or dead, regardless. You saw the similarity there? The acid builds up, breaks down the cell membrane, it explodes, it sends its contents to neighboring cells. Those cell membranes weaken till they explode and they release their contents, weakening the neighboring cells. So, regardless. Now, did you guys ever see the movie Signs?
Signs.
Signs with Mel Gibson, Joaquin
Yeah.
Phoenix. Okay. Sorry, I'm about to give up. Well, actually, this is not the punchline, but this does happen in the movie. Do you remember where they call him because he used to be a preacher, a reverend or something? He used to be a preacher, and they call him out because his wife's been involved in an accident.
Yeah.
And she's pinned up against a tree. And what did they tell him?
That the body is starting to shut down as minutes go by.
And what would happen when they moved the pickup?
She would be dead instantly.
Uh-huh. So is that possible? Getting pinned and then release the vehicle or whatever's pinning the person and then they die?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The reason being is because of that acid buildup. And that vehicle or whatever's compressing is acting like a tourniquet. And once they release it, all that poison, that acid now gets released throughout the body. And guess what? It starts breaking down the structures further down. Okay? So the acid doesn't, or the body doesn't like acid. And it'll try to take care of itself. Remember that concept we talked about at the beginning? How the body's going to do what it can to take care of itself because it wants to go back to that happy place. So when the acid builds up, the body's going to try to take care of it so it doesn't get disturbed. All right. Questions on this?
No.
All right. So this is what we've been talking about, that failure of the pump. And so the submembrane fails and okay. All right. One of the most important things the body has to do is called perfusion. If the body's not getting adequately perfused, the body's going to start throwing a hissy fit, or I call a hissy fit. It needs that. With perfusion, we're talking about the delivery of the oxygen, the glucose, and other things that the cells need in order for them to work. But the other thing too is, again, do you let the number 2 stay in your toilet?
No.
No, you flush it away, right?
Yeah.
Just think about the septic system as your circulatory system. So those waste products have to be removed from the cells. Because again, one of those waste products is carbon dioxide, right? And so that carbon dioxide needs to be gotten rid of. And so the bloodstream takes it to the lungs, and then we exhale and we get rid of that carbon dioxide. So there is a process that's going on, and the body's taking care of it. That's the cool thing about all of this stuff. Okay. Now, if it's not working properly, then it's going to be very upset. So in order to have adequate perfusion, adequate delivery, number 1, there has to be a good composition of ambient air. And we're going to talk about all of these separate. 2, the airway has to be open. Think about it. If you can't breathe, if you have actually, yesterday I was talking about ribeye steak, so I'm still thinking about ribeye steaks. If you have a ribeye steak stuck in the back of your throat, is any oxygen getting past that obstruction and going into your lungs?
No.
No. So is that a bad thing?
Yes.
Yeah. So the airway has to be open. Then the mechanics of ventilation. And we talked about mechanics of ventilation, didn't we, in the last chapter?
Yes.
Remember the intercostal muscles contracting, the diaphragm contracting, creating a negative pressure? Does that sound familiar? All right, I trust Jessica. Now, this can be a little bit hard, and again, we'll talk about it. Ventilation to perfusion ratio, or what we call the VQ ratio. Don't ask me how Q is perfusion, but it is the ventilation perfusion ratio, or the VQ ratio. There has to be so much air and blood around to be able to deliver it to the body. The other component is it has to get in the bloodstream, and the bloodstream has to be able to transport the oxygen throughout the body and then pick up and eliminate that carbon dioxide. So all of that has to be intact. So in other words, if you're trying to get out of state, but all the roads are closed, how are you going to get out of state? Can be difficult, right?
Yeah.
How about having enough blood in your body to maintain a pressure and to be able to transport enough oxygen throughout the body? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. What about your heart? Doesn't your heart have to be able to work adequately to push the blood all the way through?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there has to be enough resistance to maintain a blood pressure. You need that oomph to be able to push it all the way through. If you don't have a lot of oomph, how far is that blood going to be able to go?
Not far.
Not far. And there are some organs the body needs to take care of, namely the brain and the heart. Most important organs the body has to take care of. Then you have microcirculation, the smaller blood vessels, and finally the blood pressure, which is we just talked about with systemic vascular resistance. So all of that, man, when you think about it, all of that has to be intact. If not, are the cells going to get adequate perfusion? Oxygen and energy delivery? No.
No.
And so, how long do you think we're going to live when we're having issues with perfusion?
No.
Not very long. And we're forcing the body to do something else that it doesn't like to do, which is switch over to anaerobic metabolism, because it's still creating energy, is it not? Is it still creating energy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. But is that energy sufficient to really keep things going for a long time?
No.
No. No, it's just kind of a temporary fix. It's waiting for us to do something else. So really, our job becomes restoring what's wrong. And depending on what level it is, it can determine what other stuff you can do. But at the EMT level, can we stop bleeding? Or can we control bleeding?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Can you give oxygen?
Yes.
Yes, we can. So we could do some things in the meantime. Okay, we can do some things in the meantime. All right, so Brian quickly moves next to the patient to better assess his condition, while Abby unzips the airway kit and begins to select equipment to begin patient care. What specifically will Brian be assessing to determine the patient's condition?
Vitals. Adequate breathing.
Okay, so you said vitals. What vitals do you want?
Pulse. And chest rise and
So respirations.
yeah.
Okay. So remember, he was speaking like in one word sentences. So is that going to be an important thing to remember, to know?
Yes.
So pulse will tell us, and it should be elevated, but respirations, I think, is specifically important to determine. And as we're going to find out, we want to know the respiratory status. Okay. Pulse ox. We'll talk about that later. But all right, so how will Abby know what equipment and treatment the patient needs?
She'll need the T tank to provide the right amount of oxygen.
Okay. So, all right, what else? So one of the things you always need to remember is you want to treat the patient and not the monitor. That's what we call it. In other words, look to see how your patient is presenting. Don't just do something because that's the way that the numbers are telling us. If your patient is blue as a Smurf, do you think they need treatment right away?
Yeah.
But if the patient looks like Lasef, are you going to try to put a tube down her throat? Or use the BVM to try to keep her oxygenated? No, right? Because she's not showing like she's in severe respiratory distress. So, patient presentation and the vital signs. All right, what is happening to the patient at the cellular level?
Cells are breaking down.
Why?
lack of oxygen. Not energy metabolism is dying down.
Okay, keep going.
Cells start to rupture. Um,
So, okay, the cell membranes start to rupture. But let's back it up a little bit. Why is all that happening?
because of the carbon dioxide in the body, toxic.
Okay, what else? So let's be overhead first, and then we can start getting smaller. Start zooming in. What kind of metabolism are we in?
Anaerobic.
Anaerobic. So that was the overhead. And so the anaerobic metabolism is causing decreased energy production, right?
Yes.
Which in turn is going to cause what kind of failure? Pump failure. Which pump?
Oh. The potassium pump.
Sodium potassium pump. Yes. Sodium potassium pump. Which is causing a buildup of carbon dioxide, which is causing cellular membrane breakdown, which is everything else. All right. So what will happen if the EMTs don't intervene quickly?
And that all the
Your
cells
heart pops it?
start rupturing.
I'm trying to see. I can barely hear you, Brandon.
I said all the cells will start the rupturing.
Okay, they'll start to rupture, breaking down, sending acid throughout the body. And what else? What's the ultimate bad thing? Or maybe good thing, depending on what you believe.
Death.
Death. Eventually death. Okay. I need to excuse myself for a few minutes, so we'll take a break right now. Okay, give me about 5 minutes or so. All right. I'll leave that up, so if you guys are writing down. Don't forget the PowerPoints are also on my Brady Lab. But I'll be right back. All right, so moving on. Okay, so moving on. So the composition of ambient air. In the atmosphere, there is oxygen. Now, oxygen is not the main component of air. The main component is nitrogen. 79% of what's out there is nitrogen, and there's 21% of oxygen. Now, the reality is it's not exactly 21%, but it is close enough. They just they rounded up to 21%. So there has to be that concentration. Whenever the oxygen concentration goes down less than 21%, the body's going to start suffering a little bit because it needs that constant percentage. For example, if you go in an oxygen deficient atmosphere, you go in a cave, you go in a tunnel, you go somewhere where not a lot of oxygen gets in, that concentration goes down, and the person can become unresponsive or they can even die. And that's a big thing in firefighting, is going into areas where there's a low concentration of oxygen. Patients get dizzy, they could lose consciousness, and they could die as a result. Uh, uh, now, there's a couple abbreviations, and I don't think I test on it, and I don't think there's registry questions on it, but just so you're familiar with it. So you may hear the term the FiO2. The FiO2, fuck. Should just kept it. The FiO2 is the fraction of inspired oxygen. In other words, as we breathe, that's the inspired oxygen. And we call it the FiO2. The FiO2 is the fraction of delivered oxygen. How much oxygen is being delivered. So one way we can improve the oxygenation to the cells is by giving the patient oxygen. If they're not getting enough oxygen, doesn't it make sense? Hey, here's some oxygen. This will make you feel better. Right?
Yes.
So that is the rationale there. Uh,
Ah, ok. Entonces, hoy no necesitas acceso al secure room, ¿o qué onda? Ah,
I can't find what that was, so I just muted everybody. All right. The next component is the patency of the airway. We talked about how the airway needs to be open. This is where I disagree with the CAB. Yes, pulse is very important, but if you don't have an airway, you don't have a viable person. So I disagree with the compressions be more important than having an airway. And it doesn't take very long to establish an airway. Reposition it. All right, you got an open airway. If air doesn't go in, guess what? We know that CPR is going to help maybe expel anything that might be in the lungs. Sorry, I'm looking at my gummy bears. Although I'm very cautious of the gummy bears now. The airway has to be open. And it has to be open and let oxygen through. If not, the oxygen is not going to go through. Okay. So different places, just think about anywhere that the oxygen is able to, the air travels through, the nose, the mouth, the larynx, the pharynx, maybe the epiglottis is blocking because it's swollen, down the trachea, the bronchioles, or the bronchi, the bronchioles. Anywhere along that path, if there's an obstruction, whether it's a marble, a piece of meat, a lot of phlegm, whatever it is, a lot of snot, it's reducing the amount of oxygen delivery or the oxygen flow to the lungs, to the alveoli, where in turn can get into the bloodstream and actually be circulated and help create energy. All right. So, any questions so far? So I think those were easy as far as showing you that this needs to be intact in order to have adequate perfusion, right? If we can't breathe, we can't get oxygen. Now, as far as mechanics of ventilation, in order to be able to get oxygen into the body, the chest, the thoracic cavity, the chest cavity has to be intact. Let's say that Ruby roundhouse kicks me in the ribs. Am I going to be in pain? Yes. So I try to take a deep breath and I can't. Because Ruby, man, she kicks pretty good. So as a result, we already know I can't take a deep breath. Isn't my body needing oxygen that comes from a nice full deep breath? So what's going to happen to my breathing? Instead of,
It'll be inconsistent. No,
well, it's not going to be irregular.
yeah, no right flow of it. Yeah.
Think about it. If it hurts, again, instead of going, take a nice full deep breath, as I go in, what's going to happen with that pain?
Increase.
My respirations can become shallow. because it hurts to take a full deep breath. She kicked me pretty hard. Now, I'm needing oxygen, right?
Yes.
But what I'm building up now, because I'm not able to get a lot of oxygen in it, is carbon dioxide. So I need to breathe faster to get rid of that excess carbon dioxide. So it's going to be more of shallow, rapid breathing. Because I can't take a full deep breath and I got to get rid of the extra carbon dioxide that's building up in my body. So what happens is exactly what we talked about with the human body, the mechanics of ventilation. Remember, the intercostals contract, and what else contracts? For you singers, what do you have to use when you sing?
Diaphragm.
Your diaphragm. So your intercostal muscles contract, your diaphragm contracts, causing what to the chest wall?
To expand.
Okay, so it's going to expand. And then what is it going to do? It creates what?
Negative pressure.
It creates a negative pressure. All right. It's not letting me answer. My tablet's not letting me answer that message. So, okay. All right. So it creates a negative pressure. And so the air comes into the chest. All right. Remember I mentioned Boyle's law?
Yes.
All right. And we talked about the linings around the lungs, right? The pleura.
Yes.
Yeah. Just got to make sure. Getting this real quick. All right. What event occurs just prior to the movement of air into the lungs of inhalation? Anybody?
Oh,
Eight.
The diaphragm relaxes? No.
Yeah.
No.
I think it's the
The
intercostal.
diaphragm relaxes in exhalation, not inhalation.
D.
D.
Wait, what? B or D?
I think it's D.
D?
Yes.
Nope. Remember, the contraction occurs, so that's not relaxing, it's contracting, it's working. That's both the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. When that occurs, what does it create?
Pressure.
What kind of pressure?
Negative pressure?
It creates negative pressure. So doesn't the pressure within the chest decrease?
Yeah.
Mhm. So we need to breathe. Intercostal muscles are working, the diaphragm is working. But sometimes when the body needs a little bit more work or a little more effort, it's going to, and this is either inhalation or exhalation, then it's going to utilize accessory muscles. There's other muscles that are on reserve whenever the body needs some help. And it goes right back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the body's going to do what it can to take care of itself. So doesn't that sound like a perfect plan? If it has reserves or it has backups in case it's needed to be able to get more air in or actually even to push more air out. The bad thing about those accessory muscles, though, is that it's going to need a lot more energy. So think about it. I'm that respiratory distress patient, and I'm using accessory muscles, right? And so I'm already tired because I'm not getting enough oxygen. But my body's saying, you know what? Last ditch effort. I need to get these accessory muscles going. So I'm using them. I'm using more energy. So how am I going to start presenting? How am I going to look as I'm using up more of my reserve energy?
The exhalation of it.
Well, I'm having problem either with inhalation or exhalation. And again, if my body's starting to use accessory muscles, which requires more energy, and I don't have a lot of energy left. I mean, I'm creating some, but I'm having to use it pretty quickly with the accessory muscles. So eventually, how am I going to get? I'm hoping none of you have done this. What was that?
I'd say you're gonna look weaker. I mean, I'm assuming maybe unresponsive, some way.
Well, eventually you will.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked like 2 weeks straight without a day off?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the last day after 14 days on. What do? Yeah, pretty much as soon as you sit down, you're out, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what's happening here. So drowsiness. I'm using up so much energy. I don't have a lot left, right? And even, let's say, not even 2 weeks straight, you just put in a 14-hour day and you've been up since 3 a.m. Aren't you going to be really, really tired?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to paint vivid images here for you so you guys understand that concept. Is it helping?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So remember these things. All right. So your accessory muscles include your abdominal muscles, and there's other intercostal muscles that are also at work, which they're up in here. They're internal intercostal muscles. So they're right around your clavicle. They help pull the sternum up. All right. We talked about the lungs. And we know the lungs need to expand and relax. All right. If there's a lot of resistance somewhere, are the lungs able to really expand?
No.
No. It's just like driving with your parking brake on, right? Not much. You're not going to get very far. You really have to hit the gas, and what's going to happen in your gas cage? Right? Compliance makes it hard for the lung to inflate. And the smaller the airways get, the more resistance there is. So not a lot of air is going to get down to the alveoli where it needs to go. And better yet, that space inside the chest where the lungs are, we need to maintain that negative pressure. If we have an injury that opens up that area, guess what? It's going to draw air within that space because of that negative pressure. And what it's going to do to the lung, it's going to make it go, it's going to collapse it. Do we want to collapse lung? No.
Nope.
It's like you have a big F-250 lifted, right? What is it? Like a 20-gallon tank, 25-gallon tank for fuel? Maybe 30-gallon tank? But let me put a tank from a Ford Focus. So now it's like a 12-gallon tank. How far are you going to be able to go with that 12-gallon tank as opposed to that 30-gallon tank?
Not far.
Not far. Oh, and by the way, you have to haul some horses this weekend. But you still have that Ford Focus gas tank. Ain't gonna work, is it? Okay. As we've already established, breathing is important because we need to bring oxygen to the body. And so there is so much oxygen that's brought in. And we call that minute volume. And the way to think about minute volume is how much air is moved in and out in 1 minute. And we really want to be between 5,000 and 8,000. 6,000, 7,000 is normal. Okay. And the way we determine that is tidal volume times the respirations, the respiratory rate. So we can get a respiratory rate, right? What's the normal respiratory rate?
12 to 20.
12 to 20. Now the tidal volume, an average adult breathes in 500 cc's of air or 500 milliliters of air. So let's say the patient is breathing at 16 times a minute with a tidal volume of 500. What is the minute volume? Take 500 times 16 equals
8,000.
8,000. That's your minute volume. If we don't have enough tidal volume, or if the respiratory rate is not adequate, what's going to happen to that minute volume?
The decrease of ventilation.
Well, yeah, we can have decrease in ventilation. We're going to have an altered minute volume. The body, remember, the body doesn't like change. It wants that happy place. So if it's unable to do it for itself, then we're going to kick in and we're going to help it out. So we have to have adequate. So a decrease in tidal volume or respiratory rate, we have a decrease in minute volume. It's as simple as that. And if we don't have enough minute volume, it's not going to be enough to perfuse the body. And the body's going to let you know. Now, I mentioned 500 cc's. That's how much we breathe in. But believe it or not, out of that 500, 150 is not used. It goes into dead space. Goes into dead space. So it's not being used. So out of the 500, 150 is not used. So how many cc's is actually available to be used?
350.
350. Now, if we have an obstruction or we have an issue with the chest wall expansion, we have a decrease in tidal volume. So let's say we're only breathing in 350. What's our new minute volume? I'm sorry, what is our new tidal volume? Or the tidal volume of usable air? 350 minus 150.
$200.
200. You see how the amount of air available is being decreased? And so are you starving the body of oxygen?
Yes.
Yes.
And are you going to see why the body wants to kind of rebel? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we have low oxygen levels, and what we just talked about, is it going to cause low oxygen levels at the cellular level?
Yes.
Yes, it is. That low oxygen level at the cells is called hypoxia. Okay. Hypoxia is where we have low oxygen levels at the tissue or at the cellular level. That's not a good thing. It takes a while for the patient to be hypoxic before we start seeing changes in like pulse ox. Because the body's going to compensate. What do I mean with compensation? Compensate. And I don't mean how much we get paid.
Heart rate will slow down.
No.
No.
The accessory muscles or accessory things are gonna have to start to work. Like your other, your accessory organs or muscles are gonna have to kick in to work because your main ones are not working.
Correct. And it's already twice I've heard about the heart rate slowing down, and that's not true. Because oxygen is transported via the blood, and the blood or the body is sensing a decrease in the oxygen delivery, don't you think it's going to tell the blood or the heart to beat faster to deliver the available oxygen to where it needs to go?
Yes.
Yes.
True.
So what you're really going to see is tachycardia, fast heart rate, because it needs to deliver what it can to where it needs to go. Okay. Do we have to think about breathing?
No.
No.
No, we don't. It's controlled by the autonomic nervous system. It just happens. But there's more to it than that. Do you have to flip a switch on your car to be able to give it more oxygen or less oxygen?
No.
No. There's an oxygen sensor, right, that detects changes, and it will open up or allow more gas to go in or less gas to go into the fuel injectors, right?
Yeah.
Well, your body has those sensors as well. And they're called receptors. And they're called chemoreceptors. They're detecting the levels of chemicals, chemochemicals, in your bloodstream. So based on what it's reading, it's going to cause your brain to adjust to breathing faster or slower. So the rate and the depth of the respirations. So we know that carbon dioxide is a waste product, right? And we're building up carbon dioxide because of whatever reason. We're not breathing adequately. So that's going to build up the carbon dioxide. So do you think the body's going to take exception to that with too much carbon dioxide?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The levels of carbon dioxide is what drives us to breathe. Carbon dioxide drives our breathing. When there's a lot of carbon dioxide, we breathe faster to help get rid of it. We call that the hypercapnic drive, also known as the carbonic drive. So carbon pertaining to carbon dioxide, and ic, the IC, means pertaining to. So the carbonic drive pertains to the carbon dioxide levels in the blood, in the body. And it's those elevated levels that drives us to breathe. It's not low oxygen levels. All that is that other drive that you see on your screen. The hypoxic drive, that's low oxygen levels. But that's not our primary purpose or primary reason for breathing. Our primary reason for breathing is because the carbon dioxide levels build up. Now, because our body is used to that carbon dioxide, or we use carbon dioxide to help us breathe, there are some respiratory conditions, which we'll talk more about when we get to respiratory emergencies. But what happens is, because of the condition, they smoke too much, they worked in the mines, or dusts or certain fine substances, dusts. The levels of carbon dioxide built up in the body. And the body got used to it. So it became insensitive to those changes. So now the respiratory drive is no longer the carbonic drive. It is now the hypoxic drive. So it is that carbonic drive. So do you guys understand the difference between the carbonic drive and the hypoxic drive? I saw one person said yes. Other people. So, guys, I told you guys to be on camera, and I'm not hearing anything, and I don't see people on camera. So I'm assuming you guys are sleeping. If that's the case, I will be happy to stop lecture, and you guys are on your own for tomorrow. It's supposed to be interactive. Come on. So 2 cameras came on. 1 camera came on, actually. All right. So what's the hypoxic drive? Jose, what's the hypoxic drive?
Da, 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 da. I didn't really catch that. I think I had gone to the restroom for that part real quick.
All right, pick a classmate to help you.
Which one of the many? Don't put me on the spot like that. Let me get. I guess Brian.
All right, Brian, what's the hypoxic drive? You're still muted. All right. You're unmuted.
You hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Respiration controlled by a decrease of oxygen levels. This is called the hypoxic drive. Oh, Jesus. Sorry, but I don't even remember that.
It's the respiratory drive in which the body uses or gives the oxygen.
Okay, but how so?
It's when
With the
they
rating death.
What was that?
I said it uses the chemoreceptors to like to use to detect the amount of oxygen, I guess, or
Okay. So the chemoreceptors are detecting the amount of oxygen. So in the hypoxic drive, what's that oxygen level?
It's high.
Nope.
Is it normal?
Nope. It's in the word. Hypoxic. Hypo.
High?
Nope. Hypo is under or below.
So it's under.
Yeah, low oxygen level. Hypoxic drive is a low oxygen level, so it's causing the person to breathe faster to get more oxygen. But that's with the COPD patients because they retained CO2 for a very long time. And so the body just got desensitized to it. All right. So now, so Dylan, talk to me about the carbonic drive. Is Dylan in here?
I don't think so.
Nope. Thought he was earlier. Oh, you know what? I think he's at work.
Drive that lows excess carbon monoxide.
Run that by me again.
Levels are high signal and tends to speed up the drive, breathe, blow off excess carbon dioxide.
Well, why is that important?
Oh, if you got too much carbon dioxide, it's not good for you, for one.
Okay.
And hold on. It usually sends a signal if the pressure of oxygen begins to fail.
So we go back to those chemoreceptors and they're detecting a high level of carbon dioxide. What drives us to breathe?
High levels of carbon dioxide.
There you go. The high levels of carbon dioxide drives us to breathe. And we want to exhale that. We want to get rid of it. So the higher it goes, the faster we breathe. The reason I want to make sure you guys understand this is a lot of things later on is going to come back down to this. The carbonic drive, if the carbon dioxide level is increased, we're going to try to breathe it out. And we don't go to hypoxic drive unless we have COPD. So smokers can get COPD. All right. So we talked about the central nervous system and the receptors. All right, the patient is working hard to breathe and has pale, moist skin. He is using accessory muscles to breathe. So we already talked about that. But seems to be moving very little air. So what do you expect the patient to start doing very soon?
I would say he's going to go into cardiac arrest.
Well, we don't know that yet. It's actually the next sentence. If he's working hard to breathe and not getting a lot of air, remember we talked about that. When you work really hard, eventually you tire out, right?
Yeah, probably gonna pass
Wow.
out and go somewhat into not shock, but like your body's gonna try to do something to try and like kickstart, I guess.
And in actuality, it is shock. You're not perfusing the body adequately with with oxygen. So that's shock. That's shock. And so the next sentence, this is where I was getting at. The patient appears sleepy as if on the verge of exhaustion. And that's exactly what we mentioned, is it not? Yeah. So Abby selects a bag mask device to assist the patient's ventilations and connects it to supplemental oxygen. And that's what chapter 9 is going to be about, or no, maybe 10. About oxygenation, ventilation, and mechanical aids to breathe. So what medical problems could lead a patient to have such severe difficulty breathing?
COPD.
COPD, all right? What else?
Asthma.
Asthma, that's a big one.
CF, cystic fibrosis.
Okay, but that's not one of the common ones, but yeah.
Mm.
Emphysema.
What was that?
Emphysema.
Okay, emphysema.
Bronchitis.
Bronchitis.
Pneumonia.
Pneumonia.
I mean, probably an update, the Rona.
Yeah. Yep, very good point. Yeah, heart problems, also certain heart conditions. So the other one that we're going to talk about is that ventilation perfusion ratio, or the VQ ratio. So what it really is the ventilation and the perfusion of the alveolar, the ventilation and the perfusion down at the alveoli. So how much air is getting to the alveoli and how much perfusion is getting to the alveoli. Now, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, just so you know. But whatever the ratio is, and I can't think of it at the top of my head, but whatever the ratio is, will help you. I'm sorry, whatever the ratio is, just know that if that ratio is altered too much, then the body needs to try to regain it. And I go back to that. The body's going to do what it can to take care of itself. We're going to see those changes. Okay. Now, there's another term. We had hypoxia earlier, which is low oxygen levels where?
Low.
Oh, where?
Low oxygen at the cells.
Low oxygen level.
At the cells, yeah. Low oxygen levels at the cells. The other term you need to know is hypoxemia, which hypo, under, below, or hype, HYP, under, below. And then the ox is what?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. And then what's emia?
Blood.
In the blood. So hypoxemia is low oxygen levels in the blood, which is a lot different from hypoxia down at the cells. So hypoxemia can lead to hypoxia, if that makes sense. If you don't have a lot of blood in your oxygen, are you going to have a lot of blood down in your cells? No.
No.
All right. So I mentioned to you about diffusion, did I not? Or maybe I didn't. Did I mention diffusion?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I inhale and I get that oxygen and it goes into my lungs, my alveoli. So what you see here you see the oxygen right here? So I have all this oxygen in here. I'm just kind of making, all that's oxygen. In the bloodstream is not completely empty of oxygen. There is some oxygen in the bloodstream, but not a lot. So what diffusion is what we call the exchange of gas or gases going from an area of higher concentration. And in this case, where is the greater concentration? In the alveoli or in the bloodstream?
In the bloodstream.
In the bloodstream. Oh, wait, no. The concentration is not greater in the bloodstream. Look at all the yellow here in the alveoli. And look at all the yellow in the bloodstream. So I'm putting it in the chat. Fusion. Process of gases going from an area of higher concentration and area of lower. So diffusion, the process of gases going from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. In other words, I'll use myself this time. So in other words, let's say you guys are in the same room with me, and I happen to have a little flatulence. So right away, I smell it. I'm like, oh, please, I hope they don't smell it. So is it really concentrated right around me?
Yes.
Yes, right? Now, because of diffusion, the people that are a couple feet away, are they eventually going to smell it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And me being the Mexican that I am, did I eat a lot of beans last night for dinner?
Yeah.
Possibly.
I didn't have that much beans, but we'll just pretend. So isn't it eventually going to hit the back of the room?
Yes.
Because I built up a lot of gas and I released that gas. That's diffusion. Where that gas was really concentrated around me, but because it wants to go to an area of lower concentration to equalize, it does. It spreads. So that's diffusion. So going back over here, if the level of oxygen in the alveoli is higher than the bloodstream, what's going to happen to that oxygen? Through diffusion, all right, Abby, what's going to happen?
What was the question?
So what's going to happen to that oxygen when the concentration is greater in the alveoli than it is in the bloodstream?
Diffusion.
Which is going to do what? So yes, you're right. We're going to have a diffusion, but what's going to be the process? What's going to happen?
I'm not sure.
What is the definition of diffusion?
The process of gases going from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration.
Okay, so right now, where's the higher concentration of oxygen? If I just took a breath, where's the higher concentration of oxygen right now? In my alveoli or in my bloodstream?
In your alveoli.
In the alveoli. So diffusion, or through the process of diffusion, what's going to happen to that oxygen in my alveoli?
It's going to go to an area of lower concentration.
Which is?
The bloodstream.
There you go. That oxygen is going to diffuse from the alveoli into the bloodstream. Because doesn't it need to go around and deliver its oxygen to where it needs to go?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So now, Ms. Ruby. Ruby. That was a weird echo. Okay. Jessica. There you are. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you eating.
Yes.
And just say hi to your son over there, Lisa.
No, he's not my son. He's my brother.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
To your brother.
No worries.
Is he hasn't started class yet, or is he in recess?
No, he's on break.
He's on break.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I got to do the same thing you are.
Yeah.
I'm just killing time while Jessica finishes. She's on the spot now.
Go ahead.
She's nervous. All right, let me process it while you finish swallowing. So now, remember that the waste product is carbon dioxide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what do we need to do with that carbon dioxide?
Get it out.
Okay, so we need to exhale it out. So right now, where's the greater concentration of carbon dioxide? In the bloodstream or the alveoli?
Right now in the bloodstream.
In the bloodstream. So what's going to happen to that carbon dioxide? What process?
It's gonna diffuse.
There you go. To where?
To the heart.
No.
To the lungs.
To the lungs, to the alveoli. So that carbon dioxide area of higher concentration in the bloodstream, it's going to diffuse to an area of lower concentration, which is the lungs. And then we exhale and we blow that carbon dioxide away, or blow it out. All right. See, it wasn't that hard, was it, guys?
Mm-mm.
All right. Now, the other thing too is, why can't I change my screen? Because I got the pen on. Now, if you look right in there, external respiration and internal respiration, the respiration is a process of how can I put it? Respiration is a process of exchanging gases. And there's two types of respiration. And what are they?
Respirations, exhale and inhale.
No. Respiration is the exchange of gases. And there's external respiration and internal respiration. The external is what happens at the alveoli. Think about the oxygen coming in from the outside. So external respirations is the exchange of gases at the alveolar level. The exchange of gases at the alveolar level. Where internal respiration is now the respiration at the cellular level. Because the oxygen is coming from an internal source, the bloodstream. Okay, so what's internal respiration?
The exchange at the cellular level.
The exchange of what?
Gases.
The exchange of gases at the cellular level. And what's external respiration?
At the exchange of gases at the alveoli level.
Yep. The exchange of gases at the alveolar level.
Alveolar.
Yeah. Yeah, it occurs at the alveoli. All right, good. So we need to maintain that VQ ratio. If it's altered, then we either need to improve ventilation or improve perfusion to go back to that happy place. So you see ventilation better than perfusion, there's wasted ventilation. Perfusion is better than ventilation, there's wasted perfusion. So we want a happy medium. So ventilation. If we have a ventilation disturbance, there's something that's interfering with the body's ability to deliver the oxygen down to alveoli. So if you have that foreign body airway obstruction, is that going to interfere with the delivery of oxygen down to the alveoli?
Do you think we put the curtains upside down?
What was that? Okay. So is that going to interfere with the ability to deliver oxygen to the alveoli?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a ventilation issue, ventilation disturbance. Now, another thing that can occur is what we call a pulmonary embolism, where there's a clot that has become dislodged and then has become stuck somewhere in the blood vessel. And so is blood able to get past that blockage?
No.
No. So even though we have oxygen to the alveoli, the blood is not going to that alveoli to pick up its oxygen, correct? Or to drop off its carbon dioxide. So that's where we have a perfusion disturbance. Blood flow is not able to get past, therefore not able to pick up its oxygen and drop off its carbon dioxide. Okay. Now there also needs to be adequate pressure, blood pressure. Because that constant push needs to remain consistent to circulate the blood throughout the entire body. There's a lot of blood vessels, believe it or not. And so that pressure needs to remain constant. If it's not constant, what happens to the perfusion component of it? It goes down. Right? Why? Because not enough of the blood is going to be picking up oxygen. All right. We talked about this. Talked about that. All right. Take a 10-minute break. You guys are fading on me. Take a 10-minute break.